As Nicole signed the divorce papers and slid them toward Ted in silence, the air seemed to freeze for an eternity. Ted said nothing, his eyes locked on the face of the woman he had loved with every fiber of his being. Not because he was surprised, he knew this was coming, but because he wasn't sure whether the action was a genuine decision or a final test from a heart that had been hurt but still loved. Perhaps deep down, she wasn't just blaming Ted for past mistakes, but was also blaming to hide something even more troubling. A look, an emotion, a moment of weakness with another man. One she didn't even know had made her heart flutter. But instead of facing that, Nicole took the easy way out, ending a marriage instead of admitting she'd changed. Ted wasn't stupid, of course. Deep down, he knew something was wrong. Nicole's sudden request for a divorce after what seemed like a period of trying to mend things was a clear sign of an underlying event going on. A third party, an inner change that he wasn't allowed to know about. But even though he could sense it, he still tormented himself with all the past mistakes, the nights he was away from home for work, the times he reacted coldly under pressure, the financial decisions that Nicole doubted, all the things that had pushed them apart little by little. For Ted, the divorce papers were not just the end of the marriage but the end of the image of the man he believed he had tried to become for Nicole. That was why, in the conversation between him and Andre on a gloomy afternoon, when the gentle wind blew through the long hallway of the Vernon house, those sighs were not just sharing, but also the silent cry for help of an abandoned heart, still in love, still needing to be heard. Andre listened, not saying much. He understood that feeling all too well. He himself was confused between two women. One was a past that could not be let go, and the other was a fascinating present. But unlike Ted, Andre has nothing left to save, but only by letting the other person find their own way back. And maybe, what Nicole needs is not Ted's apology, but a distance big enough to realize for herself whether true love still exists or not. Meanwhile, upstairs in the Dupree mansion, Danny and Nicole no longer talk to each other as much as before. Both are going through long, sleepless nights, torn by memories, unanswered questions, and the feeling of loss when the men who used to be close to them are gradually becoming strangers. Vanessa tries her best to reconnect the two women she considers family, but all efforts are met with defensive silence. Maybe it was because they were both embarrassed, or maybe it was because deep down they were jealous of each other. Danny was jealous of Nicole's cool strength, and Nicole was jealous of Danny's freedom and non-attachment. While Vanessa thought she was healing, she was actually witnessing a slow disintegration of the pieces that no longer fit. Vernon, for his part, watched everything silently, like a wise old strategist. He did not intervene directly, but nothing escaped his eyes, especially Ted. Vernon knew all too well the values of his former protégé, but he also knew that Ted was not perfect. What made him hesitate was not his daughter's love life, but a more terrifying possibility. That if Ted left the Dupree household, he might reveal financial secrets related to the real estate deals Ted had been involved in on Nicole's behalf. And if those details were exposed, the whole family's reputation would be dragged into the quagmire of controversy. Vernon didn't say it, but he was calculating. If they let Ted go, they needed to make sure he left quietly. If they kept him, they needed to control his emotions and his intentions. The problem was that Vernon no longer knew what state Ted was in. A man who still loved and could be reformed, or a man who was hurt and ready to destroy everything because he felt betrayed. Anita, as usual, was the soft voice of emotion in the family. She sensed the brokenness in Nicole's eyes, but also knew that her daughter was hiding something. Unlike Vernon, Anita was not afraid of scandal. She was afraid that her daughter's emotional wounds would never heal if no one dared to speak the truth. And in a private moment, when Nicole accidentally revealed a text message from a man other than Ted, a new sense of rift arose in Anita's heart. Maybe Nicole was not entirely wrong to love someone else after so much pain, but her choice to blame Ted instead of facing her own heart was what made the divorce so toxic. Anita did not tell Vernon about this. She was still trying to find a way to bring Nicole back to herself before things went too far. But time was not on her side. As the family battles their own battles, no one notices that the only person watching over them all, like a silent gatekeeper to their secrets, is Vanessa. She can't tell them everything she knows, nor can she fully side with anyone, but there's something in her eyes, a worry she hasn't dared to face. Is she helping them heal? Or is she just perpetuating a lie that's ready to explode? And as the last rays of the afternoon sun fade behind the iron fence of the mansion, everyone thinks they're hiding the truth from each other. But what they don't know is that the compound called Beyond the Gates has never really kept secrets for long, and the next storm is closer than ever. Andre has never been one to be carried away by emotions. He was raised in a family that valued control and a calm exterior over inner turmoil, but that doesn't mean his heart is immune to emotions. On the contrary, because he has always had to suppress and cover up his emotions, every time Andre is truly moved, everything inside him feels like it's about to explode. And this time, it's not just one woman who's messed him up, but two. One is Dani, the first woman to see him at his weakest, the one who cried on his shoulder during family breakdowns, the one who told him that true love is when you see the broken pieces of someone and still stay. The other is Ashley, a breath of fresh air, fiery, bold, and ambitious, a different kind of seduction that Andre never thought he'd be attracted to. She's like a reflection of himself in the mirror, a female version of control and cunning manipulation. But that's why Ashley made Andre feel dangerous. Not because she was trying to hide anything, but because she was so obvious. Obvious in her hungry eyes. Obvious in her strategy to capture his heart like uncharted territory. And that made Andre feel like prey. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure who was in charge of his own love story. In that turmoil, Andre turned to the only man he'd ever seen as a model for how to deal with love and power. Ted. Not because Ted had all the right answers, but because Ted was in a situation similar to his own, but on a deeper level. Ted was going through a divorce, about to lose the woman he'd built a future with, and Andre wanted to know from experience if love was worth it. The conversation between the two men on a rainy afternoon at the mansion didn't play out like a typical emotional exchange. It was like a strategic review, where each man carried his own pain wrapped in a rational shell. Ted wasn't telling Andre whether to choose Dani or Ashley. He was talking about moments when hesitation was no longer a sign of consideration, but a sign of disorientation. And Andre knew that if he continued to walk down two paths at once, he would lose both. What Andre didn't expect, however, was that Ted might be looking beyond his own feelings. As someone who had been involved with the Dupree family in many ways, lover, partner, spokesman, and now the man about to leave, Ted understood the shifting undercurrents of power. He knew that if Andre chose Ashley, he would be opening the door for an outside force to penetrate a family structure already shaken by the emotional turmoil of Nicole and Dani. Ashley was no naive person. She was ambitious. She had connections to influential figures in finance. And if she won Andre over, she would likely become the key player in coordinating the family's investments. Ted couldn't let that happen. Not because he was jealous or because he wanted to thwart Andre, but because he knew that once the family lost its internal initiative, the entire structure of prestige and power that Vernon had built over decades would collapse like a sand castle. So instead of trying to dissuade Andre, Ted chose a different approach. He connected with Andre as a companion, sharing the pain of an unfulfilled separation, using his own broken story to rekindle in Andre the image of a true love that had once existed. He spoke of Nicole not as an ex-wife, but as a woman who had been the center of his universe, who had made him feel small and mighty at the same time. And he asked himself, not to himself but to Andre, could that feeling be repeated with someone else, or was it just a one-time thing? Andre listened, not protesting. He began to wonder if Dani had ever been the one who made him feel like he didn't have to prove anything, and if Ashley was pushing him back down the path where he had to wear armor to love. But he also realized that sometimes his lingering attachment to Dani wasn't because he still loved her, but because he owed her. An unresolved emotional debt, an old chapter not yet written, that prevented him from entering the new chapter with a light heart. Ashley, meanwhile, was not standing still. She saw Andre's distance not as a sign of the end, but as a danger signal. She knew that Ted had a great influence on Andre, and she also knew that to keep her place by Andre's side, she had to clarify what she was. A true lover or just an emotional investment strategy? She chose to attack gently. A private dinner, a social project she had initiated that Andre would join, a message from a friend of McBride's that Ashley was being nominated for a local development council. All of it was like arrows hitting Andre's fragile zone. He felt admiration but also suffocation. For the first time, his love was caught in a dilemma between emotion and structure. Between someone who reminded him of the past but was honest, and someone who represented a powerful but uncertain future. Deep down, Andre knew he couldn't put it off forever. He had to choose. Not a choice of woman, but a choice with whom he did not have to measure every move. And when he sat down beside Ted again, no longer as a seeker of advice but as a decision-maker, his eyes were no longer those of a troubled man, but of a man about to cross the threshold of change. Ted looked at Andre, knowing immediately that the great game had begun, and whoever Andre chose, the choice would be more than just a matter of love. It would reshape the balance of power between families, open or close the doors of secret alliances, and place a woman at the center of a world whose complexity no one but them knew. And in that moment they both fell silent, as if understanding that what lay ahead was no longer a matter of the heart, but of survival in a world where love, fame, and intrigue were never separated. Vanessa has always been the one in the middle, quietly observing, gently reaching out, and subtly intervening when necessary. She has never been loud, never put herself in the center, but somehow she has been present at every important moment in the Dupree household. When Nicole made the decision to divorce, when Danny had her last fight with Bill before he left, when Andre withdrew from Danny without saying goodbye, and even when Ashley first walked into the mansion, her eyes blazing with ambition, Vanessa was there, as a friend, a sister, a guide. But now she is faced with a task she is not sure she can complete. To bring together Nicole and Danny, two women who were once the epitome of strong sisterhood, now standing on opposite ends of a lonely path, unable to find common ground. To outsiders, Nicole and Danny were still polite, still appearing together at charity events, still smiling lightly in front of the press. But in private moments, they became so distant that even Vanessa did not recognize them. No more late-night calls, no more impromptu breakfasts, no more sharing glances when the outside world became too noisy. Instead, there was silence, distance, and smooth but empty words. What confused Vanessa was not the rift, but the reason behind it. Because, if both of their marriages had broken down, if both of them had lost their way at the same time, they should have drawn closer together, should have become each other's support like they used to be when they were young. But that did not happen, and Vanessa began to wonder if there was something hidden between the two sisters. Nicole became more withdrawn after her separation from Ted. She didn't talk much, didn't ask anyone about Danny, didn't react when Danny started going out to dinner with new men. Danny, on the other hand, became indifferent and sarcastic. She openly expressed her mockery of the way Nicole handled the divorce, thinking that she was too cold, too calculating, too concerned with her image rather than her heart. But Danny herself didn't realize that in that mockery was an unnamed wound. Maybe it was because she felt abandoned when her sister, who used to be her support, disappeared into the whirlpool of fame, leaving her alone in the midst of emotional ruins. Maybe it was because Danny always felt that Nicole was more favored, more trusted, more protected by her parents. And now, when both of them failed in their marriages, she expected a companionship, a shared sigh, but that didn't come. And from then on, a hidden injustice was kindled in Danny's heart, a jealousy suppressed by a proud exterior. Vanessa saw it all, and she knew that even a small spark could burn the fragile relationship to the ground. So she began to intervene gently at first. Afternoon teas together, charity projects arranged for both of them to participate in, brief advice inserted seemingly unintentionally. But strangely, the more she tried, the more she felt like things were going in the opposite direction. Nicole seemed to realize Vanessa's intentions and began to distance herself. Danny clung to Vanessa more, shared more, relied more. And then Vanessa realized something undeniable. She had failed to mend the relationship. She could not reconnect a thread when the two ends of the thread did not want to move forward. Even worse, she began to suspect that she had inadvertently created an opposition by being the emotional support for both of them, but not maintaining the necessary balance. And then one night, sitting alone by the lake behind the villa, Vanessa began to question herself. Does she really want to help the sisters heal? Or is she unconsciously steering them down separate paths to make it easier to control them? She always says she's neutral, but deep down she knows she's drawn to Danny. Danny is like her when she was younger. Emotional, vulnerable, rebellious, but also genuine. Nicole is too smooth, too controlling, too much like Vernon, whom Vanessa has never fully trusted. And as Danny begins to trust her, as she becomes able to influence Danny's decisions in her work and personal life, Vanessa begins to feel a sweet kind of power. Not violent power, but soft power, the power of being listened to, needed, consulted. She doesn't mean it, but she doesn't deny that she's at the center of the emotional life of a Dupree woman. And from that position, she begins to reshape the world around her. A gentle suggestion that Danny should buy her own apartment instead of living at her mother's. A suggestion that Danny should try her hand at brand ambassadorship instead of continuing with family activities. A warning look when Danny tried to call Nicole in a fit of emotion. All were subtle, all were reasonable, and all had a certain effect. Nicole was not naive. She noticed the change in Danny and knew that Vanessa was influencing her more than ever. But she did not react. She chose to remain silent because she was calculating too. She needed space to rebuild her personal image after the divorce, needed time to stabilize her position in the media, and needed a distance from Danny so as not to be dragged into negative emotions. But what she did not expect was that the distance not only hurt Danny, but also created a void that Vanessa quickly filled. And when she realized it, it was too late. Danny no longer sought her out, no longer asked or shared. She became a stranger in her own family. Vanessa did not smile, nor was she happy. She felt this success as a sweet pain. She had gained the trust of one person, but lost something else that she could not name. Maybe it was the pride of seeing two strong women holding hands and weathering the storm. Maybe it was the belief that she was truly helping, not controlling. Or maybe it was simply regret at having been so tactful in a world that needed candor more than strategy. But it was too late to turn back. And Vanessa knew that if she truly wanted to make amends, she had to choose sides, either to be a connector or a leader, but not both. And in a world where every eye is scrutinized, every gesture interpreted, every relationship potentially explosive, Vanessa knew that choice would not only shape Nicole and Danny's future, but also determine where she herself would exist on the redrawn map of power in Beyond the Gates.